You never know how these things start. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to GallantFew Leader Chat. Wednesday, 3 o'clock Eastern time. Today with me, I have DJ Struntz, Minister of Propaganda for North American Rescue and a just fabulous human being. DJ, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Bryce. Stoked to be on here with you.
Yeah, it's been really too long since we have seen each other. I mean, we live like 2 hours from each other, and I think the last time we saw each other was that swell at Masonboro when we went out with Jason. So
yeah, I was there last night. It was beautiful. We had like glassy, chest high waves, 3 rainbows in the sky at the same time. Like it was, and wasn't even that crowded. Knock on wood that'll ever happen again. But yeah,
those are the silver linings in what's going on right now.
Oh man, I looked at Jonah, my 12-year-old, and I was like, dude, like capture this moment because they don't come along that often on the East Coast. Like just cherish it.
Cherish that moment because soon the bay, the little cove is going to be filled with dinghies. The lineup's going to be filled with who knows who. So
yeah, I was shocked. I mean, we had 5 days of rain down here. I don't know what it's been like at your house. It's just been raining nonstop at the coast. And there was a big thunderstorm north of us. So the wind went offshore. It was like, everything but singing baby dolphins in the lineup. That was the only thing that was missing, I think.
Wow. Yeah, man, did it rain? I mean, it rained. Like it's been raining for like the last 4 days. I felt like I was in Costa Rica again or something.
I think we got close to like 10 inches down here. It's stupid. And we're like,
and thankfully the weather was cold enough. Like that was the other. Like if it had been like 90 and raining, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it just humidifies.
It does. So so thanks again for being on. I want to start with your bread and butter, photography. Like what got you into photography in the first place? And then just kind of talk about your life and existence with Surfing Magazine.
Yikes. Okay. The short, dirty version.
Yeah.
Photography kind of was an accidental thing. I was into it a little bit in high school, had my first photo published in Wakeboard Magazine when I was like 16. Just kind of had a camera in the boat with friends and then didn't really have any courses ever in it. It was something where my best friend and I, like my junior year, we had a quote unquote photography class, which was basically just me and him screwing around in a dark room, like coming up with like the first time we did solarization, we thought we discovered like the greatest thing ever. We had no idea what it was. We're just like, somebody walked into the dark room. We're like, no. And then we're like, oh my gosh, it's the coolest photo now. And, so that just was kind of an intro to photography, I guess, and kind of showed it.
On the wakeboarding thing. So just to kind of capture this is like early 90s, right?
Well, we started out with the Scurfer, Yeah. And then,
these are like, if you have wake at all, it's from big bladders of water or like just random.
They didn't have the bladders of water yet.
Sandbags.
We would pull the plug in the boat. We pull the boat and fill the boat with water. Yeah, absolutely.
So you're trying to take photos while this is going on. Like,
like
those serious gimbals, like keeping everything steady. Like this is all on you. So awesome.
Yeah, this is just fun with your friends. And, between runs, if you were the spotter, you might as well take photos or something. And then that kind of turned into nothing because I was bent on being a marine biologist. So I didn't even think about photography through college, went through college, then went on to do a master's in marine biology. While I was doing that, started surfing. I didn't start surfing until I was 21 when I moved to the East Coast. So grew up in Northern California, didn't surf, just wakeboarded, mountain bike.
Yeah, typical Northern California things.
Yeah, just shooting guns, fishing, that sort of thing. And then moved to the East Coast to Charleston to Folly Beach and started. My boss at the marine biology lab surfed. So he took me surfing and then I got bit by that bug. Thankfully, I didn't discover that prior to college because I definitely would not have finished college.
Truth.
Yeah. I was like, oh, so I was, I'd get up at 4 a.m. for hurricane swells, surf until 8, have my clothes in my car, jump in my car, run to the marine lab, watch, work until 4:30, jump back in the car, rip back out to the beach, surf until 8:30 at night,
And this is South Carolina. This is Folly Beach, South Carolina.
Folly Beach. Folly Beach has a day.
waves than Virginia Beach, you know, like.
Oh, but on its day, Folly Beach, you know, the washout can throw. I mean, there were days. On its day. There was a lot of groveling. But you know, that's what makes you appreciate the good days. East Coast surfers, I mean, ask Kelly Slater. When you learn to grovel and you want it, but I was no Kelly Slater. I just brought
the bug bites there.
Yeah.
Then, man, you can only imagine what better surf, even just on the other side.
Yeah, and that's literally how the surf stuff happened with photography. Was right before I went to do my master's up in Wilmington, North Carolina. Some of the guys that I surfed with said, "Hey, we do this trip to Mexico every year. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Mainland Mexico? Sure." They're like, "Well, you need to get a gun." And I was like, "What caliber?" I got, you know,
yeah,
I got several. What caliber are we talking about? They're like, "No, like a 7.6 surfing gun." I was like, "Oh."
Where'd you guys go to Todos?
No, we went down to Pasquale's in mainland.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
you did say mainland.
Yeah. So that was my first surf trip. That is the only surf trip I've gone on in my life just to go surfing.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember showing up planes, trains, and automobiles to get down there, walk into the restaurant that night. A couple of guys were already there and we're eating dinner, and the silverware starts rattling on the table. And I was like, "Is there a train station? Like, what's going on?" They're like, "Oh, those are the waves." And I was just like,
wow.
Coming from South Carolina to that, you wake up the next morning and they're like, "Oh, it's only 4 foot." And you're like looking at it, you're like, "That's double overhead."
From the back.
Glad I brought a camera. So there were days that were beyond my level of ability, and that's when I started shooting surf photos.
Wow. Sounds kind of like my the beginning of my snowboard career. My skis broke, and the only thing that was available to me was a snowboard. And so I either rode or
various ways.
You know, that certainly is. So then you get into this hobby, which then you land. I mean, how did you land a gig with Surfing Magazine?
I'm a bit of a persistent human. So when I got back from that trip, we did a slideshow for all our friends, like a Mexican fiesta party, and had a bunch of people over and looked at all of, you know, I'd shot slide film. So I submitted photos to Eastern Surf Magazine.
Oh, yes.
And Dick Meserol, the photo editor, responded and was like, "Hey, we never get photos of South Carolina guys. Stoked. Think about doing this next time." I was like, okay. So started addressing some of the technical stuff. So I'd shot slide film that was too high a speed for, you know, it made it grainy for print. It was fine for a slideshow, but little tricks like that. And
yeah,
he just gave me some constructive criticism, which coming from a science background, I was fine with.
And just slide film were the old cut sections of guys doing surf tricks, right? Like,
yeah, this is prior to the digital world. Yeah, this was like actual film.
So probably everybody out there going, "What is slide film?" I remember old surfing mags that had the different sequence shots, just like Skateboard Magazine had the different sequence shots of a trick. So just wanted to bring everybody up to that old school lingo.
Yeah, welcome to the way that photography should be learned. Actually, I think digital makes it way too easy. Having to learn proper composition with film is a different beast. And you only had, you know, a roll of 36 shots. You go swimming out through, you know, later in life, go swim out at Pipeline with 36 photos. And the part you hated was going in and out. Once you're out there, you know, for the most part, you're pretty good on a wave like pipe, but then going in or out, you're probably going to get rolled, pop, bounce on the reef.
Oh yeah.
You know, all those things. So, but yeah, that's how it kind of started. And then I moved to Wilmington, and there was a real kind of crowd of young pro surfers that were here, and the photographer that had been here moved. So they didn't have a photographer. So they kind of were like, you can't, oh, you're going to be the photographer. I was like, okay. And then just started submitting photos to the different magazines, and they, and not being a shy human at all, I looked on the mastheads and saw the numbers for the magazines. These are print magazines. Those used to exist too. And I just called and said, "Hey, can I speak to your photo editor?" And they were like, sure. So, Flame, Larry Moore at surfing, and then Pete Terrace was at Transworld, and Jason Murray was at Surfer at the time. And I just harassed those poor gentlemen. And they tolerated it probably because there were not many photographers at the time on the East Coast. There was Seth Stafford up in the Northeast, Kevin Welsh down in Florida. There were a few down around Sebastian Inlet, but in the Mid-Atlantic, there was nobody. But there was a lot of talent, and everyone kind of recognizes North Carolina hurricane season waves. So they put up with my phone calls and my scientific approach to figuring out how to get published. And then finally, it was actually Transworld gave me my first trip. Pete Terrace was like, hey, if you can line up this list of surfers and go to Nicaragua, because nobody had been there. There had been one trip since like the Civil War down there. And they were like, hey, if you can line this up, we'll send you on a trip. Because that was the dream, The dream was to be a staff, and I don't know what I was, hindsight's 2020. I don't know what dragon I was chasing on this one, but I was like, I want to be a staff photographer. And sure enough, being the type A personality, about 15 minutes later, I called Pete back and said, well, all the surfers are in. I got a location.
Yes.
We have this set up. And he was kind of like, guess we got to send you.
I know those feelings for sure. Sending people on what you think are impossible missions. Yeah. When they come back, you're like, oh, wow, they're really serious.
Yeah, he wasn't playing around. Didn't dissuade him. So, yeah, that was the start. And then right after I did that, I shot and wrote that trip. And then I think there was a big rivalry between surfing and Transworld. Like, Larry Moore hated Transworld. Like,
wow. Why? Style, or was it just like
because he was just Transworld was the new kid, I think, and he felt, like at first it was the surfer surfing battle, and then when Transworld came along, he just, I don't know, for whatever reason, he did not like Transworld. So the moment I did a trip with Transworld, he got territorial and called me up and said, hey, you want to be our East Coast staff photographer? Yeah,
absolutely.
$500 a month, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
So that was the beginning of the next 15 years.
Crazy, and it's taken you all over the place with all sorts of surfers and experiences. And so, where does skin diving and that fit into all this?
Freediving.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Snorkeling for me, freediving for the guys I photograph. I guess it started way back. Like when I was like 5 years old, we lived in Hawaii for a couple of months my dad was a teacher, and they did like a like a liaison between a college and a high school. And he went over and taught in Hawaii for a couple of months, and I learned how to snorkel and loved it. And then fast forward, just started diving more and more here. I'd always loved the ocean, obviously got a degree in marine biology. And then was like, wait a second, what I'm doing with surf photography, you don't really see that perspective in the freediving stuff.
Yeah.
So I just kind of took something that was a hobby, and my wife's convinced every one of my hobbies, I somehow call it work.
Yes. That's it. Same here.
She's like, wait a second, that's a hobby. I'm like, no, it's work.
It is work, but we enjoy it. It's the work.
I enjoy what I do. Don't hate me because I love what I do. So that was how kind of the freediving stuff started. And then I linked up with Rife and a few of their divers, and have got to do a lot of stuff with that as well.
Now, what is in the photography realm, what are the different kind of challenges, other than like being underwater and shooting down water? Like what were the differences you had to do to shoot, above water and below water?
Basically for me, it was just really the equipment side. Because the first trip I did for freediving, I took a surf housing thinking that would work. And then I dove down past like 15 feet. And the pressure triggered all my buttons, and my camera started firing every shot on the roll. It's just like, done. You're like, what just happened? So I had to shoot that whole trip super shallow. So it was getting a housing that I could chase divers. Guys like Mark Healy, I don't even bother chasing. I just say, okay, you go do your thing. I'll come down part way, and because he's diving. I've seen him hunt fish at 150 feet.
Jeez.
It's like, on my best day, I'm diving. I think the deepest I've ever even gone was like 140 feet. So like, I'm not chasing him down that deep. Like if I'm feeling good, it's like 80 to 100 feet is deep for me during, So these guys some of them are submarines. They just go down there and stay down there.
That's really cool. And you do this diving, plus you're a big hunter, which it sounds like you learned when you were a kid as well. And you just kind of came to the East Coast where now it's like surfing and everything are all combined.
Yeah. The hunting kind of got shelved for a while because it was all spearfishing. And then Jonah came along and he kind of started to want to get into hunting. So resurrected that one. Now bow hunting is, a lot.
And he's into spearfishing too, right?
He is. Yeah. He's in it to win it.
So talk about being a dad. Now you have a son that sparked interest in two of your work/hobbies that you like to do, hunting and spearfishing specifically.
And surfing. Yeah.
That too. How has that been? How's that journey been as a dad? Like just cultivating that environment for him to just want to do it, when he doesn't. I'm sure there's been times when he hasn't wanted to do it.
Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm like the worst. I'm constantly, because I have that type A drive. So I'm like, dude, like last night we were surfing and he like miss a wave. I'd be like, come on, baby T-Rex, like paddle like you mean it. You gotta.
Yes.
So I probably pushed harder than I should at times. I don't know. It's a balance. You want him to love the same things you do. So I try to give him, he's had a lot of experiences. A lot of kids don't, just because of what I do. I have to watch him because he knows like Kelly Slater's phone number is in my phone. And he's like, yeah, call Kelly. I'm like, oh, what am I going to talk to Kelly about right now? Like Kelly's busy. Like, he's got things to do. He doesn't need to be talking to me.
That's where
they call Kelly. I'm like, no.
The kid brain intersects that. I want to be cool for a sec. I just want to be.
1 second. Let's call John. I'm like, no.
On a boat anyways.
That's an old life. They're going to be like, who is this 911 number?
Hey, did anybody call music? Is it calling us?
DJ calling. What does he want? Leave us alone.
Oh, that's funny.
You were asked us enough when you were a surf photographer. Why are you bothering us now?
That's funny. Yeah, it's my son is my middle son is sparking an interest in climbing now, and it's great. It's great to see him push, and my daughter too, Haven. She is as well. It's great to see them kind of pushing the limits, and then also knowing that I'm going to be there to catch them, keep them safe, and it's just seeing their limits. They continually push. So that's the part about being a dad that's so awesome. And I love I love seeing all the shots and photos of you guys doing your things. I mean, your whole family, not just you and Jonah.
Oh, Lorelai, she's
might
be the silent killer of us all. I'm not sure. She's like into her little bow. She has her little bow. She learned to wear compound. She has a traditional bow and a compound bow. And she's figured out already that the compound bow has let off. So it's easier for her to pull and hold than a traditional bow, which is the same the whole way. So she's like, Daddy, I want my compound bow. She's 5. So, so I'll get her a compound bow. I load it for her and she sits there and wings arrows at the target.
Yes.
Usually in a princess dress. I mean, if she hunts, it's going to be in like pink and purple sparkly camouflage.
Right.
Without a doubt.
Real Tree makes that. I mean, that's blaze orange or blaze pink. It can be either one, I think.
Yeah, she's been in the stand in princess dresses, like rhinos.
My wife talks about being in a big one-piece like baby suit going hunting with her dad, and almost got hypothermia when she was a baby.
We haven't done that one yet. We haven't pushed it that far. I try to with her. Jonah didn't have a choice. I mean, Jonah got submerged. His birth announcement photos at like 3 weeks were underwater with me in a free dive suit. I mean, he got submerged early. Lorelai's had a little bit easier existence than Jonah, for sure. She hasn't been pushed quite as hard. But she's also way more cantankerous. Like, you can't push her. in no uncertain terms will push back. And I'm like, great, 17 is going to be awesome.
Oh, man. I'm not ready for that. Not ready at all.
Fatherhood is an adventure every day.
Certainly is. Certainly is. So coming back to kind of how you talked about, you got the job with surfing, your tenacity, that also helped you in your quest to work for North American Rescue too, because that was kind of out of the blue. Also, you just kind of were like, hey, I want to do this for you, and talk about how you got connected to NAR. Yeah.
So I guess, it all kind of starts with that trip I did to Yemen for Surfing Magazine in 2006.
Right.
Took surfers over there. And right before I left, some of the guys that I surfed with were kind of the old school Marine recon, force reconnaissance Marines that had gotten out and lived here in Wilmington. And they were like, oh, one of our buddies just got home from Yemen. You should talk to him before you leave. So I drove up to Lejeune and met with a master sergeant who had just gotten home from doing a foreign internal defense trip in Yemen. And he kind of gave me a civil affairs brief and a list of a couple words and some things not to do and what to do. And I left for 3 weeks to Yemen. And he also gave me some first aid products. And at the time, I didn't even, it was like an early, like generation 3 cat tourniquet, gauze, pressure dressing. Didn't think anything of it. Got home, started doing more weird trips to, I was kind of the brown water of Navy of surfing. I went to all the locations that they kind of were like, this trip might fail, send Struntz. I didn't get all the Indo boat trips. It wasn't, it was like, here, go to Central America, go to South America, go to weird places, like,
yeah,
send DJ. So as I got more and more, the Yemen trip really kind of opened doors into the MARSOC community, because when I got home, I kind of got introduced around to a few of the guys that were plank holders over at MARSOC, and I was the crazy guy that went to Yemen with no gun and took surfers, and they thought that was pretty funny.
You crazy.
So I started hanging out with them some, doing some, pretty standard shoot, move, communicate. I'd never, I grew up hunting, but I'd never done tactical shooting, so that was a kind of a new thing. And they taught me some kind of rudimentary TCCC or tactical combat casualty care, got introduced to more products along that line. And then fast forward, one day I looked at the wrapping on one of the tourniquets and was like, South Carolina. I was like, I live in North Carolina. So I Googled him, called him. Like, who are you and who do you want to talk to and why? Like, oh, I'm DJ Struntz. I'm a surfing magazine photographer. I'm going to this crazy island off the coast of Chile. We're going to get dropped off by a Chilean frigate, and I need a better first aid kit. And they're like, okay, who are you? Why are you calling us?
Oh man, who was it?
It was the receptionist. And so they passed me back to the vice president of non-DOD, Brent Bronson, and he just thought it was hilarious. He's like, how did you find out about us? I was like, well, here's how. And so I think he was looking for an excuse to take his teenage daughters to the beach. So he's like, I will bring you a kit to Wilmington, North Carolina. So he drove up, brought his family. They stayed downtown, hung out at the beach. We met up and kind of talked over, the kit stuff. And that was the kind of the beginning of the NAR romance. And then kept in touch with him after the trip got canceled, but I did other trips, kept in touch with him. Kind of came up, one day I was kind of like, hey, let's do some adventure kits. They thought that was an interesting idea because they didn't have anything like that at all. So I got together with Mark Healy. We developed some kits that are like the adventure line over at NAR that, along with, people that actually knew what they were talking about, not just us, we're the good idea fairies.
Right. Yeah. Got to have both of them.
Got to have good idea fairies and people that are like, wait a second. And then one day I got really towards the end, once we had my daughter, I was getting frustrated with the 24-hour call back that the magazine wanted. Like, hey, we need you to go on a trip now. My family was like,
we're done with that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I couldn't figure out a way off the wheel. It was like golden handcuffs. You're like, okay, I've worked so hard to achieve this. Now that I'm here, how do I get away from it? And I didn't know, because I loved what I did. I mean, traveling with your friends to exotic destinations is not a terrible
No.
thing. It was pretty rough on my marriage just because I was gone so much, and it was becoming harder and harder on the family, but I just couldn't figure out a way out of it. Did a lot of praying about it and still hadn't quite figured it out, but I just called up NAR one day. I called up Brent. I was like, hey, when are you going to hire me?
Yes.
What are you going to do? I'm like, well, I'm going to shoot your pictures, and you don't have social media, so I'm going to start your social media. And he's like, well, let me talk it over with the boss. So he talked to our CEO and founder, and he called me back like an hour later. He's like, this was like on Friday. He's like, can you come up on Tuesday? I was like, I'll be in the car. So
yes,
drove up. That was I guess I just hit 5 years as full-time like last week or week before. So yeah.
Wow. Lots of things have changed and grown through NAR over the last 15 years, I would say, even more than. I feel like they've been on the forefront of really just the medical like equipment, not equipment, but just that particular realm of industry. And then just your piece and your involvement. I mean, I'm going to start you guys a social media account. How much that has played into the effectiveness of their equipment on top of it, because the equipment's only as good as how you're trained to use it. And I think make or break, a lot of it is made or broken in the instruction, in how it's visualized and things like that. And so how has that been? Talk about starting a social media account for a medical equipment company, or whatever.
Yeah, the whole idea was like, how do you make medicine cool? Like,
that's right.
Because shooters just want to shoot, right? And you can have all the tier 1 operators in the world. You ask them, hey, do you want to come to the med brief? And they're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to get shot.
Yeah, that's
right?
it. Right.
We don't want, the medics got it, so trying to make that medical piece resonate to a bigger audience, and make products have a personality, bring that kind of, because, we make products, but my goal was like, hey, we need to celebrate the end user. We need to educate the end user, and we need to inspire the next generation of end users. That was kind of what I looked at is like what I want to do with NAR social media. And the bottom line was I want to help the good guys do even better things. So if I can leverage connections, whatever else, to help medics, first responders, the guys that are out there hanging it on the line to save somebody else's life, then I'll move mountains. And NAR's let me do that, which has been incredible. They've given me, I think they kind of viewed it as an experiment when it started. I know that's the word they use. We'll try to experiment. I didn't have any, I had a personal account on, my personal accounts, but I wasn't trained in it, just like photography. It was just something that,
efficiency, and you saw that you could potentially put some of your talents in place.
Yeah. So to start it, I just leveraged my own personal account. I was just like, okay, I've got photos. I know people.
Let's do this.
And then I did the same thing. I was like, I started seeing which accounts had pretty decent sized followings. Back then, it was 5 years ago, 50,000 was a pretty big account. And there were a couple accounts that I reached out to and was like, hey, we're going to do a photo shoot. If I give you my photos for original content, will you push the NAR page as, give us credit? And they agreed. And, pretty soon we were going up like 1,000 followers a day.
Yeah. Which that used to mean a lot more than it does now.
Yeah. Well, now the growth with the algorithms, you're just like, some weeks you can go with 0 growth. Sometimes you go backwards. Sometimes you go up.
Yeah.
But at the time, it let me grow the account very rapidly. And NAR had its name, and the products, the products sell themselves. They're great products. So I just added that. I was the softer side of NAR. I was the education, the make you feel good about yourself, gross you out when you wake up in the morning, go to drink your coffee, and I post some obscene injury to start your day off.
And I love it too. Like just a lot of them are with NAR products. I mean, and like that to me is one of the important parts of why having that visual presence is necessary, because to see a cat tourniquet in use is you build trust. Not that the EMS, not that first responders don't trust these products, but it just gives you that little bit more of like, yeah, this thing that I've been carrying, you know, this bright orange thing that's on the outside of my pack is going to work.
Yeah,
if applied correctly. And it's
those
just
are the stories I love. Oh, puppy dog. The stories I love the most are the, you know, stories from end users like, hey, just want to write in and say thank you because we saved somebody's life last night. And there's no better job satisfaction than, or, you know, the ones that really make you feel good from my position are, hey, we didn't think we needed this until we saw your post. We went and bought a tourniquet. My mom slipped and fell, saved her life, kind of thing. And we get a lot of those, which are pretty humbling and, you know, definitely give you a feeling of satisfaction.
Yeah. I mean, and it's this like North American Rescue has been really focused on, I think, on first responder, EMS, and military. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like there's a whole adventure realm out there that doesn't have, in my opinion, very decent medical equipment out there for it to use. Like when I go hiking, backpacking in the woods, I take a North American Rescue X Pack. I mean, the thing's, it's on the outside of my pack. It's it butterflies open. Everything's in there, dress right dress. It's got all of the stuff that I would need to tackle anything that I would find out in the woods. And there's just not enough of that out there for the basic. I mean, for my, like, I've made my own out of stuff now, but like, there's nothing that I can just buy to slip in my crag bag for climbing right now. Yeah. And nothing out there for somebody. And I've seen quite a few injuries at Pilot. You know, my buddy saw a woman slip off a 40-foot rappel and cracked her head open. He had a North American Rescue trauma bag with him, thankfully, and saved her life. And like, you never know when those things are going to happen.
No, I keep kits. Now it's like, I'm always like, oh man, I'm like, the moment I don't have one because of what I do, I'm going to be the one that has to deal with something, and then I'm going to have to improvise. And I'm going to be the one going, yeah, I've always preached, be prepared. And I got caught. I mean, yeah. So, but now they're everywhere. I have them in my, you know, I have trauma kits in my cars. My kids know how to use the stuff. Poor Jonah's been the model for, I don't know how many different injury scenarios. Kate's now been sucked into it. Lorelei's always the concerned onlooker. You know, she, from a baby, she was like having to, you know, why is Jonah laying in the road with a cop car? You know, Jonah's not hurt, but it's okay. He's all right. It's just pretend.
Yeah. So the stories that are going to formulate.
They're going to need so much therapy. They walk in and see my screen from, you know, photos getting dropped, sent over, you know, secure from like somewhere downrange. And they're like, is that fake or is that real? And oh yeah, that's fake. Yeah. Yeah.
And so in your experience too, with photography and stuff that NAR's been doing, the realms of like artificial training implementations, like arms and chests and different things like that, like how has that improved since you've kind of bridged into this realm? Because I've seen a different change. I've seen
the accuracy, you know, it all turns into how much do you want to pay, right?
Right.
There's some trauma simulators out there. We have some, like the Tom Mannequin. It's not even a high fidelity simulator, but it's still like 60 grand or something for one unit. And the high fidelity ones are a couple $100,000. But the parts trainers, like I shot a photo this morning, you know, using a leg for wound packing. That's just a big piece of silicone. So there's options now. I think the real interesting training, like, you know, nobody wants to talk about live tissue training. That's the best training that the military gets. Yeah. The perfused cadavers and cadaver training, like the reperfused or reanimated, whatever, you know, they have, what they're doing with cadavers is incredible. I think it's a real noble thing that, you know, people will donate their bodies to for this stuff because it absolutely saves lives. When you see medics training, you know, I've seen PJs doing, you know, extrication and stuff like that. And it's a real cadaver, you know, in there. It's a different sense of urgency and than having just rescue Randy laying there.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's amazing that people are willing to do that, and that we're just kind of pushing the envelopes and seeing the benefits in that particular type of training. Because I mean, it goes as far back as the I forget what they actually call it, but like the live where the bodies have been kind of taken apart and they're encased in like the glue. I mean, I saw that in Germany, and it was absolutely fascinating to see the human body broken down to such degree to really truly understand like what you were made of. You know? And
the ability of surgeons to put the body back together, and first responders and military medics to, you know, stabilize people long enough to get onto a table, and the severity of injuries that are now survivable. You know, there's the joint trauma service, which has a brief every week, and they go through stuff, and they used a term which I'd never heard before, but it really kind of hit hard. And that was the burden of survivorship.
Yes.
That's something now that guys are faced with, they're surviving injuries that, you know, a generation ago, they wouldn't have survived. You know, they're multiple amputees, they're missing their pelvis, they're, you know, and they're surviving because docs won't quit. And now the technology and the medicine's gotten so good that they're getting through all the way to San Antonio and the Center for Intrepid. But the quality of life, you know, it's the burden of survivorship. Now their life is totally changed. And that's a whole different ethical conversation of how, you know, how far do you go to save a life, you know? And it's crazy to, you know, those are the conversations that are happening, and the level of medical care that our service members get. It's incredible. I mean, guys are coming home that should be dead. I mean,
that's right. And I'm glad that you talked about that, because you've had experience. I wanted to talk about Waves for Water, but beside that, you've had experience with veterans and surfing together. And you know, I have friends like my friend Rosa, who he's a triple amputee, you know what I mean? You talk about like how far you go to save a life. I look at Luis, and it's like you go until you can't, you know, and like I think of him, and I think of his life and his journey from before to that moment of when he got blown up and everything changed for him. And I mean,
it's incredible. And there's so many great organizations that are helping, you know, give guys life experiences after injury that, and it's different, you know, it's different. It's interesting to see the difference between like civilian casualties versus military mindset, you know, and just big army versus special operations, like how the people process their injuries based on their walk of life. Because you get guys in the special operations world, they knew the risks they were taking. They assumed those risks. They assumed that things could, you know, this could happen. And when it happens, you know, there are some of them that don't deal with it well, but others of them are, you know, a lot of them are like, who cares? I'm going to keep doing it.
And I ask you this because you've gained access to this particular community through North American Rescue, and you've been a part of the outdoor community, the surfing, the like adventure sport family forever, you know, and you have friends that do both. And like those veterans, those guys that retired that, you know, from special operations, can you think of the ones that are like living and doing the things that they want to do, like the activities? And can you think of the ones that are just doing the jobs, like they're doing contracting, they're doing sales for Glock or somebody like that? You know, the mindset between the difference of guys that I've seen getting out and their life post-military, even if they're not injured. Like I come to realize if you live where you want to be and where the activities that you do, like if you like to surf, your ass should live at the ocean. You know, if you love to climb, you should be in relative distance to some rock climbing. And I just notice a quality of life, and it doesn't matter financially where you are in that realm. I've noticed a happiness level increase in those guys. Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the guys that are flourishing post transition are the guys that are doing something that they believe in that gives them a sense of mission. I mean, sure, for some of them, the world of contracting fulfills that chasing the dragon that they still might not want to give up yet.
For a whole lot of money. Yeah.
Or getting paid a lot better, that enables them to do a lot of the things like we were just talking about that maybe they couldn't do before. For others, you know, it's giving back through one of the, you know, charity organizations or taking other wounded veterans hunting. You know, I have friends that got out from tiered units that do that, and they spend a lot of their time organizing hunts for guys that are really hurt, and they love that. It just depends on the individual, but you'll see the whole, and there's guys that go, you know, to work for the big companies that they worked with when they were inside, and they, you know, do well on the outside too. It all just kind of depends on that.
It's a gamble.
Yeah. What gives them that? The guys that do the best have a sense of purpose though.
And I think they stay connected with people that matters. Yeah. And are like-minded with them. I see that as a very important thing as well. So,
and for some of them, going out in the middle of nowhere and having 100 acres and nobody bothers them and they just do their thing.
Very small fraction of people that I know that can do that for a long time. Anyways, they think, oh man, tons of acres, I can't wait. And then like 6 months, they're like, where? I need people. Give me people, please. Yeah, I try to sway them away from it, but. All right, so we'll wrap things up. We got a couple questions. Nick Palmadino's chomping at the bit. I'm gonna wait on his questions because he's being an asshole. But Abel, he's talking. He wanted to ask, kind of going back to your social media stuff. He had said, you get clips, you get other people to tag your stuff. You know, what are you doing now to kind of work the algorithms of social media? Like what should somebody be focusing on? If they focused on nothing else, like what should somebody be focusing on if they care?
More than anything, it's just having your own voice. Like have a voice that is you, that is your company's voice, that's unique, that sets you apart, and don't worry about the algorithm. The algorithm is black magic. Like I can't beat it. Yeah. I mean, I've taken courses on it. I've asked experts about it. Everybody has their own theories. There's all sorts of scams to try to. I don't subscribe to any of it. I subscribe to post content that matters to you and
stay on track with it.
Stay on track. Like I run the NAR account like a personal account. I mean, that's a reflection of what I'm constantly watching stuff, and if it moves me, if it matters to me, if it's something that I think is relevant, up it goes. Right. And we're fortunate because we have so much, we don't have to rely very much on our own original content. I mean, we do to a certain extent, but we rely a lot on user-generated content. And
that's a big one.
Yeah, so I try to cultivate those relationships. I run social media like a human network. Like I run it like a full on, to me, I'm a spider in a web, and all those connection points are way more valuable than any one post. So I invest in those relationships more than the bulk of my time isn't posting. The bulk of my time is talking to medics and first responders and people across the board and generating relationships.
Yeah, that's good. You're right on point too, building those relationships. All right, Nick Palmachino's question: bigger threat, shark attack or pack of hyenas, and best way to treat a hyena bite?
Oh man, shark attack you just wouldn't see coming. The hyenas you would hear coming. In North Carolina, it's a shark attack all day long because I'm not too worried about hyenas. If you're part of the soft community, the hyenas are your fellow soft warriors. So if you guys are out there in the soft world, probably the pack of hyenas will get you before the shark will.
That's probably true.
The veteran community is a pack of hyenas oftentimes.
We certainly are. We certainly
are. From the outside looking in. Man, treating that one. Yeah, the shark attack, that's easy. Hyena is just going to eat you. I don't know. Just roll up.
You're going to treat
a hyena, they're not even going to find you. I mean, at least a shark, you know, is going to bite you once and maybe give you a chance for a tourniquet. A hyena is going to crush your bones. And
yeah, speaking of that, sharks. What's your? I know what my closest call is. Diving. What has been your closest shark call? Diving.
Well, there's the real kind of infamous one that made like the Today Show.
No, tell me about this one.
There was a tiger shark in the Gulf of Mexico that on my first photo trip for Rife decided to decided to get a little frisky, and our host, who's a very experienced diver, decided that the risk of it biting one of us outweighed the risk of him dispatching the shark. So it was a 12-foot tiger shark that he went mano-a-mano with, and my friend prevailed. Shark ended up dead. Ended up all over the news. We ended up having to be in the center of that because it was being kind of reported differently than the facts were. So we wanted to be a good ambassador for the sport. We weren't out there hunting sharks. We were hunting tuna. It was a young shark. 12 foot is not that old of a tiger shark. It's the last thing any of us wanted. But he was smiling in one of the photos, holding, as you would be had you fought a 12-foot beast of the sea. And, given the ever-shifting political climates and people's sensitivities to things like this, he got death threats, and the eco terrorists were all about being very upset with him.
Oh, wow.
So that was an interesting day with a shark. It wasn't one that, I expected. The photos are pretty eye-opening. But the other times, I mean, I don't know how many times we've had sharks come up, they're very, very, very efficient predators. They're constantly probing your ability to know where they are when they're spearfishing. So they're lurking behind you just out of sight. The moment your spear gun goes off, they're rushing in to investigate what you're up to and try to get an easy meal. Can't blame them for it. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
So, you're dealing with sharks on the North Carolina coast. It's every time you go diving. It's not like, oh, are we going to see a shark sometime? It's like, oh, there's 5.
Yeah.
So that's, had them bite your fins. Like it's stuff that
you're in their place. I mean, you're in their world.
You kind of accept the risk and you try to mitigate it. And we get fish out of the water. We don't leave fish in the water. If we shoot a fish, it's yank it out of the water as fast as we can, put it in the cooler. We're trying to keep the water clean and once they get a hold of a fish, then they'll change attitude. Then it becomes a competition thing. Instead of just being curious, it turns into a competition and they're going to win. So that's when things can get kind of dicey when you get multiple sharks that are competing. So just try to keep it mellow. If it gets bad, leave and move. The goal isn't to have negative interaction with sharks, with them or us. That was the only shark that I've ever seen shot on any of the trips I've done, and that's lots and lots and lots of time underwater. And it was, it was a beautiful fish. I was screaming for a camera. I was like, give me my camera. Oh no. Oh no.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, that's too many adventures to mention in one show. And those are the odds of playing the game. We all have them. Some have sharks, some have sharp objects. It's
typically drivers in the South are way more dangerous than any shark.
Yeah, you're definitely more likely to get hit by somebody texting and driving around these places.
Oh, Lord, that's the worst.
Well, man, we managed to hit 50 minutes. This is, I always think like, what am I going to talk about?
All my friends would tell you I don't shut up ever, so it's not surprising to me. But
it's funny. We like I said, we live 2 hours away from each other. I think we've spent more time at SHOT Show and other places than we have around here, and it's nice to be able to talk to you at a normal volume while
not having to yell over all the idiocracy.
You know, not having to yell or like watch out for like Rudy Reyes being like half naked and you know like all these other people that go there and you know just put on shows and stuff. It's really nice to have a plain.
I appreciate the opportunity.
So again, everybody, thank you, DJ. Thank you for being
Thanks
on.
for having me.
Again, we will be back on next Wednesday, 3:00 Eastern time. If you are not following North American Rescue on social media, please do so now. They have a great page. Their products have missions. If you don't know about North American Rescue, you are missing out. And thank you again, DJ, and look forward to actually seeing you in person.
Sounds good, brother. Take care.
Yeah.